Hello, hello, hello. The mask is back, and we have, I would say, is maybe a little bit underrated card. I know that's most people are recognizing that it's a good card, but even then, I think it's even a little better than good. I think the UFC has been really kind of keeping up these days. They've been realizing, at least in the second, maybe not quarter, but second half of the year, that they need to actually like they're probably losing fans with the structure of the company, with how bad their promotion is sometimes, with how so many Apex fights are happening still in 25, in the big 25, and how, a lot of those fights are exciting fights that are being wasted in the Apex, and he's spending his time promoting Canelo, Crawford, and, Power Slap and all that other nonsense. So I rightfully understand why some people might even underrate this card because, they're so used to. Well, you could also understand why you'd be excited for this because like you're so used to crap that this is actually really solid. But um, I think you can understand why people would be upset and say, "Oh, well, we should expect better, even more than this." And look, for fight night, I like this. Okay, I think that this should be the average at the very least, but it isn't. So as it stands, I think that this is better than average. I think this is pretty good, or even dare I say it's great because you have the goat. Where is he, man? I'm missing. Oh, Ante Daliha. Yeah, dude. Yes. Am I gonna get a Croatian pick right this time? Please. All right, Sam Hughes, Shauna Bannon. Let's just jump into it. I'm picking a lot of underdogs on this card. Shauna Bannon, I'm picking her. Sam Hughes, she's a really good gritty. She's like a gritty boxer for women's MMA. She has okay takedowns, meh kicks, but it's really her gritty I guess kickboxing, but I was gonna say boxing, and sometimes mixing it up with the takedowns and just hugging on the ground with those takedowns. Sometimes she'll land some meaningful, significant strikes on the ground, but for the most part, it's just to hold you there. And Shauna Bannon, the thing I like about her is she actually fights off the bottom. When she got dropped and she looked like she was out of it against Punja Tomar, um, that name, she was literally she got an armbar after that. So the fact that she still had the wherewithal in her brain to, uh, fight back and get that armbar, get that arm, and get the submission. That's showing to me that she's gonna be able to work off the bottom, and if she doesn't get the submission, she'll probably find in the scrambles, in the submission attempts, a way up. And if not, she's going to survive the round, having done enough on the striking since Stephanie Lucindo, the last opponent of Sam Hughes, got a split decision. And even though I thought it was a clear 29-28, I'm pretty sure it was still a really close fight. And she implemented a lot of the stuff that Shauna Bannon does quite well with those kicks at range. She does those a lot. Although Shauna Bannon has a bit of a different style, she's a little more bouncy with it, and she pokes with the with the the what lead leg. How is that so hard to say? Lead leg. She like pushes the opponent's abs area. A lot of the body kicks, a lot, well, they're kind of like push kicks for the most part. They're not the most damaging, but it's fun to watch. I like these sort of women's MMA fighters that usually use more of their kicking because they usually look quite sloppy with the hands. I mean, look, they've gotten better, but for the most part, women still look kind of sloppy in UFC with the hands. So when you see them use the kicks and the jujitsu as well, you see those Brazilians that are coming up with some pretty good jujitsu. It's like the jujitsu and the um, what's the Natalia Silva does it. I think it's like Taekwondo. Those kicking based martial arts are really entertaining for women's MMA fighters, whereas the boxing not so much. They kind of just look like they're they're your drunk grandpa just swinging at the bar. So I think that she's going to be able to see those swinging grandpa shots from Sam Hughes and time those kicks beautifully and time the blitzes nicely. I think that she'll get taken down off those blitzes a couple of times, but I think she'll get up or use submissions, and I think that she'll land enough on the feet, enough those pitter pat shots that'll accumulate to a 29-28 decision for Shauna Bannon. Good underdog. And I'm surprised that the odds are so close. Look, I think that Renat is more skilled than Andreas Gustafsson, but he is nowhere near the Marauder. Okay, he's not the Marauder. He he gasses in the third round. We know this already. I mean, in the third round against Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, who we know isn't that good now. Um, let's be honest. And I mean, how ironic though is it that Zaleski dos Santos actually front checked another Marauder in BSD, which we'll get to in a later part of the card. But anyway, like the third round against Dos Santos, Renat faded. The third round against Nicholas Dalby. I mean, the pretty much whole fight against frick, what's the dude's name? The most blatant robbery ever, Carlos Leal, who keeps his hands low, who's absolutely terrible on the feet, defensively. He was actually getting tagged up by that guy. Now, granted, he probably came in with some kind of like a EPO or other performance enhancing supplement, but I mean, look, as Nate Diaz said, everybody's on steroids, okay? Everybody in the UFC. So Andreas Gustafsson, uh, I think that if he was on steroids or not, Carlos Leon showed that if you're just getting in the dude's face, and it doesn't matter how sloppy you are, it doesn't matter if your hands are super low, as long as you're not getting chinned, which he wasn't getting chinned by Renat, you know, Carlos Leal will just freaking run through those shots, and we saw that he doesn't actually have the greatest defense. Well, we knew that already, but we saw that he didn't have the greatest defense against Muslim Salikov. So Andreas Gustafsson, listen, if Andreas Gustafsson's style is what Carlos Leal did to a T, but he even keeps his hands up more, and he puts a pace on you even more. And granted, he doesn't have as much power, perhaps, but he actually sticks to more fundamentals and he keeps you in the clinch. I'm picking him. I don't care. I think this is going to be like a. I think that for once I'm going to completely agree with Bedtime MMA. I'm going to completely agree. I think it's like a 29-27. I think Renat's going to lose the third round by 10-8, which he has done before in the UFC. In fact, possibly multiple times even. I think yeah, I think on one of the judges' scorecards for Nicholas Dalby, it was a 10-8. So yeah, in two fights, he's lost the third round by 10-8. And in the third round, I mean in the second round, I think that he is going to pour it on and Renat's going to feel it because Renat is a good grappler. I think he's going to, as Andreas is trying to pressure forward in the first round to get respect, I think Renat is actually going to use his skill and sort of an Umar Marab type thing where he kind of outskills him early, but then he gasses, and it's kind of gonna kind of be like a budget Marab versus Umar in that sense, although without the flashy kicks from Umar, from Renat. And Brad Tavares versus Robert Rychek. I'm actually picking Robert Rychek because Robert is a powerhouse, and Brad Tavares has been getting chinned every single. It's literally like what MMA Chase says about Alexander Volkanovski these days. It's like Brad Tavares' whole thing is getting dropped, except without the coming back part, because Che would always say, "Oh, Volk gets dropped and then he comes back to win the fight," except for a couple other occasions. But Brad Tavares doesn't come back when he gets dropped. That's pretty much a guarantee. And he was going to war with Gerald Mearshart. I'm sorry, if you're going to war with Gerald Mearshart at this point where he gets smashed in like the first couple minutes against Mikhail Alexeychuk, who's a pretty underrated fighter at this point, let's be honest, but if you're getting smashed by Mikhail Alexeychuk in the first round, like dusted like that, uh, so easily, and then you had a war with Brad Tavares. Like I think that that's a bad look. And Brad Tavares has been going downhill more and more. His best win is Chris Weidman. Basically, his best wins are these over the hill guys who don't actually have pop in their shots. Robert Brychek just wasn't able to land on short notice and like a week's notice against Ihor Potieria, whose whole thing is like upper body movement and styling on his opponent until he can't most of the time. But Ihor Potieria was getting put up against these absolute prospects, these absolutely phenoms that he was getting put up against, and so the I don't think that Ihor Potieria is that bad of a loss really on short notice, and I think that he was actually doing okay for himself. He just didn't find the knockout blow, and I think he'll do that against Brett Tavares. I listen. I just think that Brad Tavares, he was known as this legendary gatekeeper, but at what point do we say, okay, like with all these other legends, eventually the chin's got to go, like a Shogun Hua type of thing, where Ihor Potieria just puts him out. At what point are we going to have to say, okay, it's his time? Trey Waters, Sam Patterson, another underdog I'm going with. Lots of underdogs, as you'll see. Like I said before, I'm going with Trey Waters by decision. I think that people overestimate how bad Trey Waters did against Billy Ray Golf. Some people thought that Billy Ray Golf won, me included at the time, to be honest. But Billy Ray Golf, his thing is a pressure boxer, and he was utilizing that in and out movement very well, and he was kind of just eating the shots that Trey Waters was landing, and he was landing super clean. It's just that Billy Ray Golf has an amazing chin, and it's not a great look. I understand that a lot of people are going to say it's not a great look, similar to how, oh, it's not a great look for the war against Joe Mearshart for Brad Tavares. But in this case, it actually doesn't really matter that it's not a it's a bad look for Trey Waters to have a close decision against Billy Ray Golf when he got subbed, or it might have been a KO, I forget exactly, against Ramiz Brahimaj, because that's a completely different style. And Sam Patterson, he is way more chinny and he has a very long neck, and those guys are typically a lot easier to land on and rock. And we even saw for Sam Patterson, if we're going to use that same example, like we saw another guy in the yeah Yanal Eshmouz. I can't believe I almost forgot. Yeah, Yanal Eshmouz, who we know isn't that great at this point. Let's be honest. He was much smaller, and he was able to find the chin against Sam Patterson. So if we actually compare, I understand that the grappling is going to be much better from Sam Patterson than Trey Waters. I understand that completely, and it's a good submission pick, no question. But if we actually compare on the feet, and I don't think that Trey Waters is going to get taken down. I think he's improved there enough at least. His distance management is so good. I mean, people overrate how many shots that Billy Ray Golf landed clean, and that's what you have to do. You have to get gritty with the boxing on the inside. But Sam Patterson is it's way more of a risk for Sam Patterson to do that when he doesn't have the chin of a Billy Ray Golf and he doesn't have the head movement that he had to develop. Like Sam Patterson's good boxing, no question, but he doesn't utilize his reach and his attributes as good. And even if he did, Trey Waters is better in that area, and he probably would be, even if Sam Patterson was a long rangey guy who utilizes his attributes better. So I'm going to say like a 29-28 decision where Sam Patterson wins one of the rounds off of maybe dropping Trey Waters at one in one of the rounds and getting a good few submission attempts off, but then Trey Waters lands enough pitter pat shots to even it out a bit, making it a 10-9, and Trey Waters basically schooling him in rounds 2 and 3. Perhaps. I know that's a trickier fight, but here we go. Another easier fight to predict. I'm going with Coy Fernandez. I saw that a lot of Harry Hardwick's previous opponents have some solid records, no question. Um, can I? Okay. Um, and yeah, it's solid, but Coy Fernandez, he looked like a very seasoned striker against Guram Kutuladzé, who, yes, as we all know, and it's Lucas Tracy's best prediction ever that Guram wasn't all that, and people were overhyping him and glazing him even though he didn't deserve it. And Guram's awesome. He's a cool guy. He's a really cool fight style. You know, he trains with Marab, so that's why he's a cool guy. He's the GOAT, okay? But no, in all seriousness, he really just does throw techniques out there. Like Lucas Tracy was so spot on about that. He just throws. They're fancy, but it's just techniques. It's not a lot of substance to it. It's not a lot of substance behind it, right? So, but he's still very. He's literally like the ideal Cage Warriors guy. He's literally the ideal opponent for Coy Fernandez going into fighting a Cage Warriors guy, because you look at um, how a lot of these Cage Warriors guys fight, like the Mason Jones guy, who we're also going to get to in the fight card. He he's exactly like that. You know, he throws those like 12 to 6 elbow standing, trying to cut you, trying to get some meaningful cuts. He gets some crafty takedowns, but there's not a lot of control time behind them. He throws some spinning stuff every now and again, and sometimes it lands, but it's not that effective. He's a decision merchant most of the time. He is literally the definition of these Cage Warriors guys. And he throws some fast twitch boxing combinations on the guard that doesn't really land meaningfully, but they're fast twitch, so they kind of sort of get your respect every now and again. And that's perfect for Coy Fernandez. The fact that he pretty much obliterated that kind of a style against the Harry Hardwick, who, granted, I've not seen his fights, but I've seen that sort of cage warrior style, and I have a feeling how he fights. So I think that Guram perfectly replicates that style. So I'm going to say 30-27. Perhaps a finish, you know? I could see that, but I'm going to say 30-27 for Coy Fernandez. Another dominant decision. And Ante Delija, the GOAT. Let's go. All right. Now, am I going to give him the Croatian curse, okay? Because I've constantly picked Croatian fighters as I've made this channel, and they've all lost as I've made this channel, okay? I've picked a Stipe Miocic fight. I've picked two, uh, not Ibo Aslan, Ivan Erslan fights, which they both were wrong. But those three fights, they were heavily favored to lose. There might have been one other Croatian guy, but I forget. Oh yeah, I think it was actually, um, it was like a female fighter on like the first fight of a fight night in the Apex or something. But uh, yeah, that one was wrong too, I think. But like Stipe Miocic against John Jones, okay, that was unfair. He was aged and quite frankly washed. Let's be honest. I didn't realize he was going to be that washed going into it. I know that he was like 40 or even past that, but I mean, I don't know, man. I was look, I was Prime Jones would have. I mean, a Prime Miocic would have beat him. Would have beat him. Okay, I don't care what you say. He would have beat him. Okay, Prime Stipe had that speed. He had that crafty speed and athleticism, and okay, but and Ivan Arslan. I mean that was unfair. He got fed to two prospects, and he even still made it close with the decisions, and he only lost when he was not keeping it technical. But Ante Delija, he always keeps it technical. He's always straightforward with his approach. He isn't undisciplined. He isn't coming off of a many years layoff, like a 4 year layoff that Stipe went off of. And Marcin Tybura isn't John Jones. Yes, he has nasty ground and pound, but Ante Delija against another athletic guy in the PFL who is actually taller and bigger and girthier. I know, Che likes to use that word, so I'm going to say girthier than Marcin Tybura. Tybura is skilled in the grappling, I would say, for a heavyweight, no doubt. But and his grappling, I mean, not just grappling, but his ground and pound, we all know is amazing. It's fantastic. But Mick Parkin, Slick Mick, who I don't think is as slick as Deliha in the grappling or the striking, was able to reverse positions, handle him in the ground, get his own ground and pound shots on Marcin Tybura. And I think with this kind of withering Tybura, where he's just barely passing by Mick Parkin, and I honestly thought Mick Parkin won that, but I mean, look, Tybura, look, or maybe I thought that Tybura won. Either way, it was so 50-50. Barely passing by Mick Parkin, who's just Tom Aspinall's, quite frankly, punching bag. Okay, I don't know if I could say that. He's good. He's like top 15. But 39, you're barely passing by him, who I think that, when you're going up against Ante Delija, who I think is actually really good in the boxing. He's really slick and underrated there. He has some solid power. He actually kind of decimated Renan Ferreira, who people say glaze those PFL hardcore types glaze Francis Ngannou for beating. Ante Delija did it better, okay? I mean, maybe not better, but he did it first. Renan Ferreira he beat, who is another strong athletic guy who he actually I believe took down numerous occasions and kind of just put on a grappling clinic. And he also did quite well in the boxing, even. I mean, look, there are moments against these tall, long, rangy guys like Valentin Moldavsky. But Marcin Tabura does not throw out kicks like that. He has some okay body kicks, but Ante Delija gonna get in, and when he gets in close, he is the better one in the clinch. He is the better boxer, and Marcin Tabura pretty much has the kicks, and if he gets on top in a weird scramble, he has the ground and pound. Otherwise, I don't see how he wins this. I feel like this is a pretty clear cut Ante Delija. Please don't let me down here. I don't want to. If I get this one wrong here, I might actually just have to admit that this is a curse and just pick against Ivan Erslan in his next fight. I really want to pick him. I'm so glad that the UFC still has him for one more fight at least, but I mean, come on, man. I gotta get this one right. This one makes sense, at least. At least this one on the odds as well makes sense. Umar Sy and Brendan Ribeiro. Um, I'm going with Umar Sy. Pretty obvious. I think that Brendan Ribeiro has underrated kickboxing. His straight punches are pretty good too, and he actually showed some crafty submissions with the Kimura against that. I think it's Kazakhstan guy. Yeah. Um, the guy that has like an eye twitch, a blinking twitch or something. Umar Sy was what am I saying? Umar Sy, on the other hand, though, he is much more fundamental. He doesn't really focus on getting those power shots too much. He doesn't focus on getting the finish too badly. He kind of just he is kind of that Lauren Murphy style before he got that spinning back elbow. Brendan Ribeiro, like I said, he has some long rangey 1-2s and some decent kicks. But Umar Sy, I feel like he's a much more technical guy. He even has the range advantage. He's gonna keep the jab on him. It's gonna be a close fight on the feet, but what separates this is the grappling. And you know what? I'm gonna go with just to keep things a little interesting, I'm gonna go with like a round two submission. Just because, um, Magomed Gadiasulov, Gaziatsulov, was kind of grappling Brendan Ribeiro in moments. Now, granted, I actually thought that Brendan Ribeiro had a case to win that, I think, because, you know, damage, but I think Umar Sy has some really, really good submission grappling, and he's patient there. He waits for his opponent to make mistakes, so I'm going to say second round submission, just because I don't think I'm going with any other submissions on the card. And William Gomis versus Robert Ruchala. I'm going with William Gomis by decision, another decision. And I think that, look, I don't know anything about Robert Richula. I know that he has a really good record and his opponents do as well, but that's kind of the thing with these like Europeans just making their debuts. It's hard to say that just because you have really good records, and I want to pick the Polish guy, of course, but you're coming in on your debut against William Gomis. You couldn't have given him like a Danny Silva that coming off a loss against that Argentinian guy. That's a huge prospect. Um, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name. Not the guy that lost to John Silva on the Contender Series. I'm not gonna remember the name, so I'm just gonna stop trying. But come on, you're not gonna give like a guy that's actually beatable or stylistically makes sense, right? You're going up to the guy who's like practically outside the rankings for Robert Rachula. It makes no sense. So 30-27, William Gomis, he has amazing kicks. So he has some underrated hooks. He's kind of like Leon Edwards in that regard. Yes, his boxing isn't good, but he has when he lets his kicks go and he's at that kickboxing range and the other opponents trying to enter on them, and they see the shots coming, they have some solid hooks, okay? That's the Leon Edwards, William Gomis sort of style. So yeah, pretty clear 30-27. He has a really good kicks, really okay boxing when he lets his kicks go. He has actually solid clinch work even. He's all right. Okay, so 30-27. Alex Sola and Reese McKee. I'm going with Alex Sola. I know lots of the MMA predictors are picking what's the kid's name? Reese McKee, because he had a crafty win against this dude. Come on, Daniel Frunza. But Daniel Frunza was literally just kind of stalling out the first round in that fight, and he kind of made it a 50-50 round almost. I know that Reese McKee landed the better shots, but my point still stands. That guy, honestly, he looked really trash in the striking. So if that guy's able to almost steal the first round off of just stalling up against the fence, I feel like Alex Sola, who seems to be a grappling type of guy, judging off of his record and stuff, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know too much about him either. But he has a crucifix finish and he has ground and pound finish, so I'm gonna assume this guy has some vicious grappling. I'm probably actually gonna go to a round three accumulative damage on the ground pity TKO due to ground and pound because he seems like a nasty finishing grappling type. And Reese McKee, I understand Hamza Chimaev, but he kind of folded to that before. And I think that people are kind of overrating him. Like, yes, he had a split decision against Chidi Nichidawani, and Angelusa. He was also kind of grappling in the fight, I'm pretty sure. So if Angelusa is able to do that to you, I feel like that's a hole in the stalling clinch and wrestling a little bit for Reese McKee. It's a bit of a hole in his game. And then Balaji and Mason Jones. I don't know why I said it like that. I'm going with Balaji, another underdog. I mean, it's only a slight underdog, but I'm going with decision here because I think that Mason Jones, like I said earlier, he kind of just throws techniques out there. He's kind of overrated. His striking is nasty when he lets it go on you. But what I saw in that Jeremy Stevens fight, rewatching that, man, he gets clipped with those 1-2s, with these straight shots, with these. He was just a better boxer at like 40 years old. Now, granted, he was 40 years old, so he couldn't keep the pace up. And Mason Jones, he was just folding him. He was kind of doing like a little bit of a Marab combined with a Garam out there. Um, he was kind of just throwing out these elbows on the guard, throwing out these, and one of them hit the forehead and cut him. But he's kind of just letting his pace go. But he was not the more technical guy out there. I don't believe that for a second. He was just the more youthful, prime guy, and he had more attributes. And he was in the UFC, or I guess just in the octagon in MMA more. Well, he was in BKFC, Mr. Jeremy Stevens. But Blazioki, he throws those straight punches really well. I liked how, honestly, rewatching his fight against um, Chris Duncan, the 1-2s he was landing on the feet, the straight punches, even shots to the body, shots to the legs. It was only until he gets subbed, and that's a bit worrying if it gets to the ground because that seems like a bit of a concern. I wouldn't call it a hole quite yet because we don't know too much about Balaji quite yet, but it might be a hole in his game, the grappling. And that's something that we'll look out for because Mason Jones has had some good grappling moments. We know that he has some. I'm pretty sure he had some fairly recent subs in his Cage Warriors days. So I'm gonna say a 29-28. I think Mason Jones is gonna get some grappling off, maybe land a solid elbow that slices Blazioki in one moment. But I think Mason Jones is gonna get pieced up by the 1-2s. Oh man, no, I'm sorry. He got pieced up so much, and seeing how accurate those were against Chris Duncan for Blazioki, I'm gonna say like a round two TKO or even a flat line. I could see those 1-2s that Jeremy Stevens was landing, who granted has power, but at this age he's not knocking anyone out. I gotta go with Blazioki by finish. No, no, actually no, because Blazioki has a lot of decisions. I changed my mind, man. I'm flip flopping like crazy, but he has a lot of decisions. To be honest, he has shown some finishing ability in the past before UFC, but no, I can't. I just can't. He's a decision merchant now, and Mason Jones is as well. So I'm gonna say Mason Jones gets dropped once or twice, but not. He has a good survivability, not enough to finish. Modestas Pakauskas, Paul Craig. I could actually, funny enough, see a Paul Craig upset here too, but I've already picked enough finishes or not finishes. I have picked a lot of finishes to be fair, but especially for one of these France/UK cards where there's not usually a lot of these finishes, but I have picked a lot of underdogs, I mean, but not this one. I'm picking a round one finish for the Baltic Gladiator. Yeah, the Baltic Gladiator. Oh yeah. Gladiator GOAT. Um, good based Christian over here against Bear Jew Craig. Bear Jew Craig, Paul Craig. Yeah, I think that his triangles are not going to work. I don't think his guillotines, I don't think his pulling guard is going to work. I think that his body kicks are something to look out for. I actually do think that he's going to be a little underrated in the striking here. He was actually kind of getting to Kyle Borralho, which we're going to get to in a second, or in a moment. Kyle Borralho was actually feeling those body kicks on the arm even. He was kicking the arm. Like Paul Craig, to be honest, against Kyle Borralho, people clown Kyle Borralho for not having a good competition, which we'll get into that as well. But he was actually facing the best Paul Craig I've ever seen, in my opinion. I know some people point to Bo Nickel, the Bo Nickel fight. I think that Paul Craig against Kyle Borralho was really good. He was picking really good moments to try and pull guard. He was, granted, he didn't get any of those moments, but he was picking good moments. He was mixing up the leg to the body to the head. He was mixing those kicks very well. And yes, he didn't really land any punches, but he was mixing up the kicks beautifully. It was almost like Islam Makhachev versus Volkanovski too. And it felt like, except he wasn't able to land the meaningful head kicks. Although he was actually doing good with the body kicks. And that's a little worrying for Kyle Borralho in his main event fight, but again, we'll get to that. But we have Modestas Bukauskas, who he keeps his hands higher than a Kyle Borralho. But he's also not just that, but he's a lot more defensively responsible, I feel, in the kicking department. He blocks really well for the head kicks. He sweeps away, sort of like Marab against Sean O'Malley in the rematch. He actually sweeps away at the kicks better. More and more you're seeing. He's shown a ability to grapple, although I don't think he wants to here, but he's shown a really good fight IQ. He's not dumb. He showed against Rafael Sequeira that okay, I've seen that Ibo Aslan was able to break him in the first 30 seconds pretty much. I'm gonna do the same. I'm not gonna give him this respect. And we've seen against Ion Cutelaba, I thought that was a pretty good fight IQ from him as well. Granted, he probably could have gone for some more offensive takedowns himself and let the hands go a little bit better, but either way, he was staying very defensively responsible. He was picking his shots really well. I feel like he's shown more and more that we've seen him in the UFC fight IQ that okay, I need to get the takedowns against a Marcin Prechner who's an amazing kicker. Okay, I need to get after this guy who has not great chin and who can't deal well with pressure and Sequeira. And okay, I need to be a little more patient against a super hyper aggressive wild hooks guy who lands some decent trips and takedowns in a Ion Cutelaba. He's shown very good fight IQ for all those fights. And the only thing about him is he just kind of he doesn't do anything super special. He has solid kicks, mostly to the legs, sometimes to the body. He has a really good boxing, but he's not really a good rangy guy. He doesn't really use his range super effectively. Sometimes he has a solid jab, okay, but Paul Craig is going to land some of those body kicks, and that's the big worry here. But I don't think he's going to engage the grappling unless Paul Craig lands a crafty takedown on him like he did against Andre Muniz. Otherwise, I think that he's going to land probably like a three-piece combo, um, similar to maybe Nikita Krylov versus Alexander Gustafsson. I don't know if that was like a three-piece, but it's going to be something like that, I think. First round KO. Brutal. Absolutely brutal retirement. And BSD versus Marcio Rufi. I'm going with Rufi by. I'll go with first round. I think second round is also very likely, but just to stay safe here because I think that lots of Tapology is picking first round, and I want to get those points on the leaderboard. I've been doing a little worse these days. I've been getting 7 of 12 my last two fight nights, I believe. I think 7 of 12, I mean, unless I said 7 of 2 instead. Marcio Rufi has really good counters. I mean, look, I was actually like worried watching back Rufi versus that Long Top guy. Obviously, he was 11 pounds heavier, but in the third round, and it was a quick, replacement. But in the third round, like he was kind of implementing that BSD style, overwhelm the guy with some hands, and then get the crafty takedown, get into the clinch, and then land some. If you don't get the takedown, get into the clinch and land some nasty shots in close. Marcio Rufi, though, he showed an ability to get out of there and survive that as well. And Marcio Rufi, even when he's gassed, showed that he's able to land those nasty hooks. He's able to fake being hurt, and then boom, a fast twitch hook. He has some amazing hooks. He has some really, really good, I guess, capoeira kicks. I mean, look, some of it is, some of it isn't. It's more of a mixture as he gets into the MMA sphere, but you could tell that there's like a capoeira inspiration there. And he even shows creativity in his own takedowns. I'm not saying that he should get that here, but that scissor sweep, right? That was amazing. But against Jamie Malarkey, but BSD, he definitely has paths to victory here, no question. But rewatching, or not even rewatching, but just seeing live for the first time against Kyle Prepolek, BSD, I'm like, yeah, this is not good on short notice. Like, you compare the short notice from BSD to Marcio Rufi for Kyle Prepolek and James Lontop, it's kind of night and day. Even though they both kind of went to a 29-28 style of fight, Okay, no, not really. Kyle Prepolek got finished, but even though they kind of dismantled their opponents and they both showed chinks in the armor, BSD's chinks in the armor were much more worrying stylistically because BSD his takedowns looked slow, even his striking looked slow, and BSD look he was kind of out striking in round two, Renato Moicano, but that's Renato Moicano. He's honestly quite unimpressive on the feet, to be quite frank. And so I think BSD, honestly, the more and more I see him, the slower he's looking. Maybe it's the damage and the wear and tear. I don't know what it is, but he's looking more and more slow. Perhaps it's the level of comp. I'm going with first round KO. I think that he's going to land one of those beautiful fadeaway hooks when BSD is trying to he's trying to mask his takedowns with some of these loopy shots that are super slow that look like, he's underwater. I think that BSD is really suffocating on the ground if it gets there, but I don't think it'll get there. And also in the clinch, I do think that there's a real path to victory there. He can land one of these beautiful uppercuts in close, or an overhand even backing him up to the fence. We've seen Marcio Ruffi get finished actually in kind of that way on the regional scene, but yeah, it's gonna be a brutal one for BSD. I think I'm rooting for BSD though. Marcio Ruffi's fun though as well, and Kyle Borralho versus Nasruddin Imavov, and I'm going with what should have been the underdog because he was the underdog all the way up until this freaking odd switch this week. But last week or this weekend, I guess, the weekend before this video is going to be uploaded, I literally um, saw that the odds were Imavov in the favorite. It was literally the odds switched, and I don't know why. I don't know why that most people are picking Imavov. Let's be honest. Pretty much every MMA YouTuber's picking Imavov. And I think that it's a good pick. But the fact that everyone's picking him, it's like, okay, this is just casual time MMA over here, casual time. Look, and funny enough that Mr. Casual Time MMA bedtime, he's actually the one who's the most realistic about this, who's picking Imavov. He's saying, okay, yeah, this is actually really close. This isn't going to be a massive finish. This is like a 48-47. And I see it the same way for Kyle Borralho. And then let me explain. Most of these people are just saying, oh, look at the guys that Imavov beat. This is how you know that I am the hardcore, okay, guys? I mean, like, I don't need to prove it, but and it's a bit cringe when people say that, but genuinely, I feel like I'm the only hardcore out here when everybody's saying like, "Oh no, bro, Imavov has better comp. He has better comp. He beat Adesanya. Who cares? Okay, did that stop you guys from picking JDM against Bilal, even though he didn't have as good comp? Eh, like, did that stop you guys from picking Islam Makhachev against Alexander Volkanovski in the first fight because he didn't have as good comp, bro? Or there's other examples. There's tons of examples, but it's like all these guys are like, yeah, it's like did that stop you from picking Hamzat against DDP because oh no, bro, it's the comp. That's what everybody's genuinely saying. Like I was so surprised to see that literally pretty much every single predictor, aside from like maybe MMA Che on one of his live streams, was like, "No, bro, it's actually because of the comp. Imavov just went up against better guys." That means nothing in this matchup. Imavov has good body kicks, no question, and that's something to look out for, considering that Paul Craig has shown Kyle Barajo is a little, open to that, but. I think that Paul Craig is actually a better kicker than Imavov. He's not better in anywhere else in the striking, but one thing that he is better than Imavov at is the body kicks. And Imavov has good body kicks too, no question. But Kyle Borralho has dealt with that now. He's probably going to try and patch that up. Not saying he's going to do that fully, but he's going to try. And Imavov, he kind of, don't get me wrong, he has some really good straight uppercuts. He has some really good straight 1-2s, and he has some really good straight deep kicks. But a lot of his punches, if you actually look back against like Cannonier, sometimes Adesanya, when he's trying to pressure him up against the fence, sometimes against actually quite a bit against a Roman Dolidze, he throws a lot of hooks. He throws a lot of looping overhands as well, and his overhands are kind of straight sometimes, like the one against Adesanya. But for the most part, it's a lot of looping stuff as well from Imavov. I'm not gonna say for the most part actually, but a lot of it is. A lot of it is looping. And when you look at Kyle Braujo versus Jared Cannonier, I love that fight. I watched that fight so much, to be honest. Even though it was kind of domination from Kyle Borralho, it was still competitive rounds. You know, those fights that are like, yeah, it was a clear 49-45, but it was very close rounds. Those are the fights you like. But anyway, you rewatch that fight. I've watched it back like 10 times. Um, Jared Cannonier, he was going for so many like hooks, and Kyle Bravo, his guard is so good for that. He rolls with the shots so well. He tucks his chin behind the shoulders. Granted, he keeps his lead hand fairly low, but and also it's kind of a guard that's open to straight shots. But and that's something that's worrying to look out for. I could see like a 1-2 or an uppercut that he tried to go for against Adesanya, dropping Kyle Brajo. I could see that because I do think that Imavov has nasty power. But Kyle Brajo has shown a pretty good chin, I think. Um, but you know, like a lot of those shots that Imavov goes for in that boxing range are these looping shots, and Kyle Braujo is gonna roll with those shots amazingly. Whereas Kyle Braujo has a very good jab, he has really good kicks, especially teep kicks and leg kicks. He went to that a lot against Jared Cannonier, and the knees. That's something that I'd really like in this matchup because even though Imavov kind of throws knees, oftentimes it's because he's going up against a shorter opponent. Kyle does it anyway. He does it against a lot of his opponents, especially against Jared, but he did that a lot more than Imavov did even. Imavov landed a couple, whereas Kyle Bravo landed like 10, double digits, at least I'd say, knees against Jared. And that's a really good style for longevity in this fight. This is a 5 rounder. I think that even though Kyle Bravo has also shown a bit of a in the fifth round and even in the fourth round against Jared, he was kind of slowing down a little bit. Um, I think that his style is more based around longevity, how long the fight goes. With those leg kicks, making it harder for Imavov to enter with those disabled movement from his legs. The leg kicks wearing on him, the knees making it harder for him to breathe. The knees to the body, which he loves so much. It's like he has such rangy knees, similar to Carlos Prates. He has such like long, rangy knees. It's like how does he reach that liver from there? It's kind of crazy the way he steps in like that. And the jab, like I said, who does listen? I know that this is a bit of a generalization. This is kind of a you could make the case that this is a bit of a casual time MMA type of thing to say in that oh you're kind of simplifying the style. But just hear me out here, and this is going to be the last remark here because I've been going on for a while. But just hear me out here. Who are the guys that Imavov, generally speaking, has been sort of exposed or on the way to being exposed to? It's Sean Strickland on a week's notice, or maybe it's a couple weeks. I don't remember exactly, but it's Sean Strickland on short notice. The jab lands himself, the teep land himself, who only brings you to the jab lands. That's all he does pretty much, and sometimes teeps. And Adesanya and Phil Hawes, who kind of has a straight punches style, 1-2 style, a jab style, and like I said, Israel Adesanya. It's these guys with these jabbing straight punches style, these longer ranger guys that he's not able to just manipulate in the clinch with the takedowns with the long rangy kickboxing slash boxing style of Imavov. It's these guys that are actually able to compete with him in these attributes while in other regards actually surpassing him. Yes, Imavov has really good boxing and sometimes kicks and power, but Kyle Borralho, he's got the jab, okay? Like Adesanya was literally on his way to exposing him before he got caught. Let's be honest. Look, I know Adesanya was on his way to losing that anyway. You could see that Imavov was finding his timing as Adesanya was doing the stance switches far too much, and as he was he was trying to aura farm. Let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. Um, but Imavov was getting leg kicked to oblivion, which Kai Borralho does really well as well. In fact, he might arguably have more stronger kicks than Adesanya. And Adesanya's thing is leg kicks and jabs. That is pretty much what his thing is. And Strickland is the jab guy. And he was getting exposed by both those guys. He was getting jabbed and leg kicked to oblivion from Adesanya and Sean Strickland. Caio Borralho mixes in those styles with other attributes that they didn't bring into the fight onto the table that Kyle Borralho does better and way better at that. So even though I could actually see like a body shot finish from Kyle Borralho because Imavov does breathe through the mouth a lot as the fight progresses, and he relies on his opponent kind of sticking with him at that pace to sort of get that second wind or second win, whatever. I think that Kyle Braho isn't going to let up on that pressure. I think that he showed against Jared Cannonier that he doesn't stop really. He can kind of take a breath as well, but Imavov is notoriously a little more slow, and he does kind of breathe through the mouth a little bit more. So look, we can talk about who have you gone up against, attributes, blah, 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 all this nonsense. Stylistically, Kyle Braho should win this fight 48-47, possibly even 49-46. I don't think so, but I'm going with 48-47. I think that he's going to upset the French crowd. And honestly, I'm kind of rooting for Kyle because everybody's against him. And look, I don't like him too much particularly, but I love his fight style. I'll tell you that much. And that's all I need from you as a fighter. But yeah, those are my picks. Lots of crafty picks from your boy Bedtime MMA. Like I'm sounding like I just freaking realized I'm sounding like Eric Anders right here. Your boy Eric Anders. That's his nickname. You should look. Your boy Eric Anders. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Mask of MMA out.